Hello and welcome everybody. I am so pleased that you could join us for our live event today with the wonderful Carrie Bear, all about athlete. I am Kelly Gibson and I am the digital marketing strategist for Tumbl Trak. Together, Carrie and I, the team in charge of bringing you educational content from our ambassadors. As I've peeked at the registrations, I see a lot of you are repeat to our events, but we've also got some first time attendees, so welcome. And once again, we've got an outstanding worldwide audience, so thank you. Let's go ahead and warm up our chat feature now. Let us know whether your first virtual event with us or if you have been with us before, or let us know where you are viewing from today. A couple of quick housekeeping things before we begin. Today's event will be recorded and a link will be sent to your registration email shortly after we close the event, so be on the lookout for that. We will keep the event as close to an hour as possible. Stick around because we will be doing a drawing for a $250 Tumbl Trak gift certificate at the end, and you must be present to claim that prize. And as always, don't be afraid to use that chat feature to ask any questions you might have during the presentation. We are going to have a Q&A at the end, so if we can't get to your question during the presentation, stick around for that Q&A. Cheers to Tumbl Trak for closing our 35th anniversary this year. Education has been a cornerstone for Tumbl Trak, ingrained in us by our founder, Doug Davis. We hope you find our content and commitment to education useful in helping you to train smart. And without further ado, it is time to check in with our lovely presenter today, Carrie. I am going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Hey everyone, I hope everyone is having a great day and everyone had a wonderful holiday. I am so glad you are here to learn with me today. My name is Carrie Bear. I am a registered dietitian and I specialize in working with athletes, specifically gymnasts, but I know we've got some other kinds of athletes on here today in helping them learn how to fuel their bodies so you or your athlete can really be your best, healthiest self in and out of the gym. I myself am a former athlete. I am a former gymnast and as well as a gymnastics coach. So I have a really unique perspective when it comes to fueling as an athlete. Not only do I understand the nutrition side of things, but the sports side of things. So I am so glad you are all here today. You are in the right place. If you or your athlete in the past has struggled with things like fatigue, injury, burnout, or just not being able to train and compete the way that they truly want to. If you or your athlete have been training hard all preseason long and you want a science-backed nutrition information so you can better fuel your body in a way that really supports not just health and competitive success, but also longevity in your sport. If you are looking for a clear, specific strategy to successfully make it through a long season, and if you have tried making nutrition changes on your own in the past, according to a lot of the mainstream information, but nothing seems to stick, you and your athlete are in the right place, right? I hope you are all ready to start fueling for performance. So I want you to think back. I'm sure we've got a lot of athletes that this is not your first year or your first season competing or performing in your sport. So I want you to think back to years past, right? During past seasons, let me know if you have experienced any of these sorts of things, right? During competition season, I know that athletes are more likely to experience things like fatigue, poor sleep, stalled or slowed growth and development. They experience muscle loss, even though they're so active and so actively working out. There's a lot of mental challenges and challenges with performance and nutrition. injury, even burnout, right? This is all so common in sports like gymnastics and dance and competitive cheer. And however, even though it's common, it's not necessarily normal. This is often the result of underfueling. And when I say underfueling, I mean that the energy and the nutrient intake that we are taking in to our body is less than the energy that our body is using for things like our sport, recovery, growth, development, even just everyday life and activities. All of these things take a lot of energy. And when we're talking about fueling and whether our athlete is adequately fueled or underfueled, a lot of times we hear about the term relative energy deficiency in sport, or REDS. This is a kind of newer framework, but something that has really been talked about more and more and more in the sports space. Relative energy deficiency in sport is a syndrome that impacts every single system of the body when the body is under fueled. And when it comes to fueling, right, it and the symptoms that can occur, it occurs on a spectrum, right? We're not just fueled or we're not well fueled, right? We can start to see impacts even in acute situations, right? Our athlete doesn't eat enough before they go to practice and they start to struggle. We also see symptoms when underfueling happens chronically over days, weeks, months, right? The symptoms can kind of build and they can get worse. Um, Symptoms of underfueling can actually impact every single system of the body, right? Everything from your energy, your perceived exertion in or out of the gym. It can impact sleep, cognitive performance, mental health, mental status, growth, development, skeletal system, muscular system, GI, digestion, um, right? Every single part of your body can actually be impacted by underfueling. But a lot of times our athletes are not going to know this. They're not going to see the connection, right? We're not going to hear them saying, I am performing at a way that's kind of feels much harder, right? Things that our athletes are going to say to you, whether you're a parent, to a teammate, to a coach, things you're going to hear them complaining about that are red flags for underfueling are things like they're feeling gassed, they're feeling winded, they feel like their endurance is just poor, even though they're doing lots of running, lots of cardio, lots of endurance kind of sets and drills. Their progress feels like it has slowed or it has stalled, right? For our gymnasts and our cheerleaders, a lot of times that means downgrading, dismounts, and tumbling passes because we've just run out of a lot of energy. Their reaction time is slow, right? It feels like they're moving in slow motion or their brain is just a step behind their body. Increased perceived exertion, right? You hear them saying, this is just so hard. I am always so dead. I am always so tired. I am always so sore. A lot of times we hear athletes that are underfueled complaining about nausea, about stomach aches, about dizziness while they're working out, right? Our athletes that are underfueled are sick more often. And I know there's a lot of things going around these days. There's a lot of underlying reasons why our athletes may or may not be sick, but knowing that an underfueled athlete their immune system is not working at 100%. They've got a lot of injuries. They've got a lot of bone injuries, and they've got a lot of poorly healing injuries. There's a big link between underfueling and what the job of the brain. So things like mood swings, irritability. I've even heard coaches call their athletes uncoachable. A lot of mental blocks, right? When our brain is underfueled, it cannot do the work. It cannot regulate, it cannot think, and it's just going to go into that fight or flight mode and be terrified. Also, a lot of times even though it might feel really common in a lot of the sports that are represented today, we start to see our athletes become small in stature, or they've got stunted or stalled growth. Like I mentioned before, athletes, no matter how high of a level, no matter what sport, no matter how hard they train, are still supposed to grow and meet developmental milestones accordingly. And the last one, I am not going to go into a ton, but I want you to kind of keep this in the back of our minds. With underfueling, more often than not, we start to see unanticipated body composition changes for our sport. So when I say unanticipated, I mean things like lower bone mineral density, lower muscle mass, and higher body fat percentage, right? There is not an ideal body composition for any athlete or any sport. Every one of our athletes is going to be unique. But when the body does not have enough energy, it is not going to support bone health and bone growth. It is not going to support muscle maintenance and muscle growth, right? That is a very high energy activity and a high energy tissue. And it will support fat mass in a way that kind of supports the body in survival, right? It needs that extra storage in case underfueling persists. So if you've ever heard your athlete or you have ever complained about this, it looks like almost everyone here on this webinar today has heard something like this, dealt with something like this, struggled something like this. It is possible that we are not eating enough. Okay? And the reality is, this might sound like a totally different message than we as adults are getting from the nutrition space. More often than not, we're getting the messages like we need to eat less, or we need to eat lower calorie, lower carb, lower sugar, right? We need to eat less. But the opposite is really true for a lot of our athletes. More often than not, our athletes have significantly higher energy needs in a way that's going to support their hours in and out of the gym, their recovery, their muscle mass, all of these things. Plus, if we've got athletes, young athletes at an age where they are hitting their growth and development years, that is going to exponentially increase their energy needs. So most athletes, the reality is they are not eating enough and they are in some sort of energy deficit. It may not be clinical REDS, it may be kind of that subclinical space, but it is likely that they are being impacted. And when our athletes are not eating enough, they fall into what we kind of call and refer to as the recovery gap. So not only are they going to be struggling with their energy and with their performance, but their body is not going to have enough energy. And we are going to, for recovery, and we're going to really see that increased likelihood of things like injury and burnout. And during competition season, this all gets heightened, right? The energy deficit seems to build. As we are training for competition, we are doing more, right? We are spending more hours in the gym, whether it's practice or at the competition itself. We are doing more high level skills, more hard landings, more repetitions, more routines, more intense practices. And as a result, there's probably fewer days off, less recovery time, and increased stress. So, really, what this looks like, right? Day in, day out, it might not feel like a ton, a really big energy gap, right? It might only be 5 or 10 or 15%. But if our athlete is never getting their battery back to 100% over days, over weeks, over months, it is going to build and build and build. And by the end of the season, or year after year after year, we are really going to see an increase in those things I was talking about before, like injury. Nutrition is so, so important for all of our athletes. It is the foundation for everything that they want to do in and out of their sport, right? The foods that our gymnasts are eating, it is the only way that we are getting energy into their body. There is no other way, right? We've got to eat nutrient dense and energy dense foods. The energy that they're putting into their body is the energy that they're going to be able to put forth in practice and in competition. Our gymnasts or our athletes, when they feel more energized, right, they are able to do more. They are able to do more in a kind of better, more productive way. Right? Athletes that have more energy tell me that they're in a better mood at practice. They're more open and receptive to coaches. So when our athletes are energized, everything just goes better. Nutrition is important and essential for their growth and their development, as I mentioned before. It is essential for strength building, for endurance, for skill building, for their focus and their mental toughness and their mental game. And it is so important for injury risk reduction, recovery, whether it's day to day, just practice to practice after, whether it's strength training or just pounding wear and tear, injury recovery, coming back from an injury, or like I said, staying healthy and supporting their immune system so they're not missing practice and out when they really could be getting valuable time in and out of their sport. And when we talk about nutrition, right, I want you to keep this in mind, right? Fueling an athlete is a hierarchy. I love to refer to it almost like a pyramid, where the foundation of that pyramid is always going to be getting enough energy into an athlete's body. Without enough energy, I don't care how many vegetables your athlete eats. I don't care what supplements they take, right? Because at the end of the day, right, if there's not enough energy, none of that stuff is really going to make a huge impact. Yet, when we hear so much about nutrition, especially in the media, in the mainstream media, we hear a lot. And most of the questions that I'm getting are things like, what are healthier options for my athlete to be eating? What supplements should they be taking? Are there specific foods that an athlete needs to eat, right? We are so preoccupied with the top of this pyramid that we forget what is most important. We've got to get enough energy in. We've got to get energy from places like carbohydrates, proteins, fats. Yes, we need vitamins, we need minerals, and we've got to make sure that they are eating at the right times in a way that's going to support their energy, their focus, their mood, and their performance. So this is really what I'm going to teach you all today. So why are you here? Of course, everything you need to know to help your athlete have more energy, reduce their risk of injury, and improve their performance. So when I start talking about nutrition, especially with athletes, there is not going to be one right or wrong answer. I know every single person chooses different foods for so many different reasons, whether it's their preferences, their culture, what's available, right? Are you cooking? Are you eating out? There are so many different reasons why people build and choose the foods the way that they do. Right? And I am not here to judge. I am not here to tell you what foods to eat or not to eat. I want you, that's up to you, right? For whatever reason. I want to give you a little bit of what I call a blueprint. And the blueprint is going to be the performance plate. It is a really simple way when you or your athlete sits down to build a meal or a snack. I want you to first and foremost think of this performance plate like a checklist, right? This checklist has 4 main sections that we are going to mix and match and adjust and change proportions and portions of. But when we pair these types of foods and we mix and match these different kinds of foods, our athletes, we can help them make sure that they are first and foremost getting enough energy. They are getting enough building blocks for their body. They are staying full and satisfied from meal to snack, from meal to snack. That is a lot of the challenges I hear from especially parents. But we want to combine foods from different groups. So the 4 sections of a performance plate are going to be grains and starches, fruits and vegetables. I call them color because they're so colorful, protein, and foods with fats. Grains and starches are going to be foods like breads and rice and pasta, a lot of our breakfast favorites like pancakes and waffles and oatmeal and cereal, a lot of our whole grains, things like quinoa, farro. Potatoes are technically a vegetable, but they have energy like a starch. For our athletes, this is going to be their main source of energy. A lot of the sports we have represented here, right? They're intermittent energy sports, things like gymnastics, cheer, even I think I saw in the chat swimming. We've got some martial arts, even some dancers, right? It's not like we are playing a soccer game where we run nonstop for 90 minutes. Right? You're going to do a 90-second floor routine or a 2-minute cheer routine, and then you're going to rest. This type of energy is really, really dependent on carbohydrates or carbs, we hear them called. And the most carbohydrate dense foods are going to be these grains and starches. Yes, our fruits and our vegetables do also have carbohydrates. They are actually both technically carbs as well, but they are not as energy dense, meaning we just don't get as much bang for our buck, which can be really, really important strategy for athletes that are, have busy schedules, very small stomachs. We've got to get as much in an easy way as possible. So grains and starches, that's the energy source. If any of you have ever, had a snack of just like some crackers or even a meal that was just kind of a plain bowl of pasta, you probably realize that these foods themselves, they're not very filling, or that energy by themselves, it doesn't really last very long. That's another reason we don't want to just eat one food or one type of food at most of our meals or snacks. We want to pair them. Right? These other sections are going to be much more filling, and they're going to keep you fuller longer when you pair them. So like I said, grains and starches, that's your energy. Fruits and vegetables, right? They, aside from energy, they play 2 very important roles. They are usually going to be a good source of fiber, which is very helpful for most when it comes to stomach health, digestive health, GI function. We definitely want fiber for that. It helps with fullness as well. But especially for athletes, one of the most important roles of fruits and vegetables has to do with their vitamins and minerals. These are some of the most vitamin and mineral, the most nutrient dense foods. And this is going to be really, really helpful when it comes to things like recovery, injury prevention, even things like taking the food they eat and turning it into energy, supporting their immune system, right? Their eyes and their ears and their brain, and helping them recover. There's so many different roles that fruits and vegetables play that we definitely want to give them a spot on the plate. And it's really important to keep in mind a lot of these jobs, the roles that our fruits and vegetables play, go along with the color. So if you've got an athlete that's picky, right? They feel very limited, especially when it comes to things like vegetables, but they'll eat fruit. I would much rather see you put fruit on their plate than nothing at all, because they're still going to get the vitamins and the minerals that they need, right? We're going to get a lot of the same things from a strawberry and a watermelon as we're going to get from a tomato or a red pepper. Same thing with, a carrot versus an orange. We're going to get a lot of the same kinds of nutrients. So we just want to try to incorporate fruits or vegetables of every color. When it comes to this last main section on the plate, that is where we're going to find a protein source. So when we're talking about protein, we can be talking about animal sources and we can be talking about plant-based sources. So when I say animal sources, I am talking about foods like chicken and turkey and beef and steak, maybe game meat like venison or pork. It might be fish or seafood, our dairy foods like milk and cheese and yogurt, our nuts, or eggs are going to be probably another animal source, as well as our plant-based sources, our soy, our tofu, our nuts, our nut butters, our seeds, our beans, our lentils, our legumes. Right? These are all going to be protein-rich foods. Protein is very, very important for our strength building, our muscle building, as well as our recovery. And anytime we expect our body to build something, grow something, repair something, recover something, that is the job of protein. I feel like I hear a lot about protein for athletes. It is a very important nutrient, but it is not the only important nutrient. It does not work by itself. It cannot work by itself. So if we are focusing on protein at the expense of other nutrients, right, that is not going to be helpful. Our athletes definitely do need more protein than, an average person their age, but at the same time, it is not an unrealistic amount of protein. I'm going to talk a little bit about portions in a minute. But just know that our athletes, if at a meal, they're making their plate approximately a quarter to a third protein, or having that portion being about the size of their hand, they're probably getting more than enough protein at that meal. The last portion of a performance plate is going to be a food with fats. Even for our athletes, fat is a really, really essential nutrient for their body. Our athletes are still going to have 20 to 30% of their total energy, their total calorie intake, going to be from fats. Fats are important for energy, like I mentioned. Fats are especially fats that are coming from plant-based sources and fish or seafood sources. So plant-based sources meaning like our nuts, our nut butters, our seeds, our avocados, our olives, our plant-based oils like olive oils and avocado oils. These are going to be helpful for brain health, brain power, focus, recovery, as well as things like fullness and satisfaction, which can be really important for building a meal or a snack. So building a performance plate, like I said, I want you to not feel like you have to start from scratch. I want you to think about meals or snacks that you are commonly building for yourself or for your athlete. And I want you to just think for a minute where everything fits. Do you at least check the box of each section? And if not, we don't ever have to get rid of something. Right? There is not a food or a type of food or a food group that we ever need to eliminate or get rid of. But I want you to ask yourself the question, what can I add? Right? Can I add a fruit to this plate? Can I add a little bit more protein? So for example, right, if we go back to that bowl of plain pasta that I was thinking about before, right, I could add tomato sauce and chopped up tomato pieces, and I could add meatballs to that bowl, and that's going to give me a performance plate. Right? Maybe I just have a bowl of buttered noodles and I have on the side, I have a bowl of strawberries and a glass of milk. Right? That is also going to be a performance plate. There's not a right or a wrong answer to doing this, but you can do this at any meal, at any snack, right, in a way that's going to work for you, for your family, for your athlete, and the foods that they eat. So like I said, the performance plate, we can adjust it, and we're going to adjust it. Not all of our meals are going to look like that picture that I posted. I know that. The way that I shared it for most of our athletes, this picture on the left here is going to be what I call our baseline plate, or our moderate intensity performance plate. So for our athletes that are training about 2 to 4 hours per day, right? They are training for season, kind of in the lead up to a competition, or even on what I call a recovery day. So maybe you train Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Wednesday, right? That's a recovery day. Even if you're not in the gym, your body still needs energy. It still needs nutrients. It still needs to catch up. and you don't really need to do anything super different. However, right, this time of year for a lot of our athletes, I know you are heading right into season as soon as we jump into the new year. And like I said, season really just increases our body's energy needs. So when we are doing longer practices, if we've got 2-a-days, camps, even in that lead up to a competition, those last couple of days, we need to get more usable energy into the body. And we can do that kind of in one of two ways. One, if you notice that you or your athlete are just hungrier, then we can just increase the amount of food that's on their plate, right? It's not a hard and fast rule of how much food that their body needs. It is always going to be a moving target because we are all living, breathing human beings. We're not robots. So we can add, right, just a little bit more food here and there from all the food groups. Or if you've got an athlete that gets full really easily, feels like they've got a small stomach, and we've got to make the most out of their plate, we can adjust the proportions to give them more carbohydrates, more grains, more starches on their plate, right? We can take off a little bit of the fruits and vegetables, right? Those tend to be more filling than they are energy dense. Even protein, right? A little bit we can scale back on, but we need to make sure we're getting them enough carbohydrates during season to keep up with those demands. And as I mentioned, I'm sure you've all got this in your head. What is a portion? What is a portion for my athlete? At the end of the day, right, this is going to be a suggestion. This is what I find myself recommending most of the time, most often for athletes. But please realize two things, right? What goes into how much food your athlete needs is really based on a ton of individualized factors. Things like their gender, their age, their height, their weight, their muscle mass, the amount that they're training, the intensity of their training, their normal fueling habits, their recovery habits, their sleep habits, right? There's so many different factors that are going to go into how much an athlete actually needs. So that's why I've really given some ranges. And also, there is not a hard and fast rule, right? Our athletes, if they are hungry, I want them to eat. I always want them to eat, right? If our athletes are asking for more food, give them more food, right? If they are saying that they are full, same sort of thing, especially for our younger athletes. We want to respect their body's hunger and fullness cues and listen, right? If they are eating significantly less than we are expecting them to, or if they are eating significantly more than we are expecting them to, right? We can always kind of think a little bit, right? Are they eating enough at previous meals and snacks? Are they eating foods from different food groups? Are they getting enough of those foods that are truly filling and satisfying? Are they getting too much, right? Is their body working too hard? Are they not hungry for that next meal or next snack? So it is not a hard and fast rule, but like I said, this is kind of what I see more often than not, athletes eating. So what does this look like? Right? If we're thinking about how to build a performance plate at different kinds of meals, at different kinds of snacks, right? We've got, plates that look totally different. They look like, they don't have to look fancy. They don't have to include crazy expensive foods or, specialty goods if you don't want them to. Right? We can build performance plates at breakfast, at lunch, and dinner, with the foods that we're already eating. And I hope you notice as well, there are some foods thrown in here too that are not technically going to fit into any of the food groups that we just mentioned, right? They're desserts, they're treats, they're sweets, they're fun foods. Even if our athletes are building performance plates at every single one of their meals and their snacks, their energy needs are usually so high that they can add, foods for other reasons. And, it's a non-issue. All foods are able to fit. And I would rather them include these foods, enjoy these foods, learn to live with these foods, in a society that they're everywhere, than feel like we need to limit them or restrict them at all. So switching gears a little bit from the what is going to be when. I think it's really important to remember and to realize that our athletes are likely going to have a meal or a snack every 2 to 3 hours. Most high level athletes that I work with are having anywhere between 3 and 4 meals and two to three snacks in a day, right? Most are probably eating about 6 or 7 times every single day. The more opportunities we give them to eat, the more likely they are to meet their energy needs, the more opportunities they're going to have to eat foods like protein and fruits and vegetables and get those carbohydrates in. So, our athletes are going to eat frequently. That 2 or 3 hour kind of time frame, that's a really good thing for you to kind of keep in your mind as well when we're considering the portion sizes that they're eating. If our athlete is eating something and they're hungry like an hour later or like 20 minutes later, it's very likely that they either didn't eat enough or they had a plate that did not have any or enough protein, fiber, whether it's from a fruit, a vegetable, or a whole grain, or fat. If they are struggling, right, 5, 6, 7 hours later, still not hungry, did we overload them with protein? Did we overload them with fiber? Did we overload them with fat? So that's really good to keep in the back of your mind. So most of our athletes, like I said, they're going to have meals and snacks every couple of hours throughout the day, and that has to start with breakfast. I could talk an entire hour on the importance of breakfast for athletes. I'm not going to do that today, but if you'd like to talk more about breakfast, I'm happy to chat more. Um, so we're going to, but breakfast is so important because during sleep, that's when recovery happens. Our athletes are likely waking up pretty empty. So if we are not giving them energy, if we're not giving them nutrients, then, they're going to go hours without, with stalled or slowed recovery. They're not going to be able to focus, whether they've got a morning workout, school. And a lot of times, too, what they're doing early in the day is going to show up later in the day, right? So we think we're going to talk in a minute about the importance of pre and mid and post workout fueling, but especially if our athletes are training later in the day, it tends to be, if they're struggling, we've really got to look at breakfast and make sure they're eating enough at breakfast. So they probably want to pack some snacks, especially if they've got school in the morning and training afterwards. A 7-hour school day is just too long for one meal. Early lunch might need a later snack. A later lunch might require an early snack. I know it can be really difficult. There's so many challenges with school, whether it's not being allowed to eat, it's allergens, it's got to be shelf stable, right? There's a whole lot of challenges, but especially for athletes that are training 15 or 20 or more hours a week, it may be important to have a conversation with the teacher, identify a few minutes where they can have something as quick as trail mix, cheese and crackers, even a pre-made smoothie or chocolate milk or something like that, where they can just give themselves another opportunity in the school day. And of course, like I mentioned, this also includes what they're going to eat before, during, and after a workout. So that is what we are going to finish with today. We are going to finish with performance nutrition strategy, right? So this is a little bit different than just meals and snacks. We are going to be using food to strategically help our athletes improve their performance and their recovery. So eating before a practice. I know there are a lot of challenges and a lot of reasons why an athlete doesn't want to eat before practice, right? Whether they've got school, whether they're not hungry, whether they don't want to eat too much and then feel the food just sitting there giving them a stomach ache. I know there's a lot of challenges when it comes to getting them to eat before practice. In an ideal, perfect world, most of our athletes are going to eat a meal, so not just snacks, but a meal 2 to 4 hours before practice. For a lot of our athletes, that could be lunch at school, That could be breakfast. That could be a second lunch at home after school, even an early dinner. But we want to make sure they're getting some sort of meal in that window when possible. If they are eating 3 or more hours before their workout, um, we want to give them the normal balanced performance plate. Uh, all of these nutrients are going to have plenty of time for most of our athletes to digest, to be able to be turned into usable energy, right? They're not going to feel like this food is just sitting there. As we get a little bit closer to practice, we need to adjust that plate accordingly. More often than not, the foods like um, too much fiber, too much fat, even too much protein, those are going to be the foods that are going to cause the stomach troubles, right? The nausea, the feeling like the food is sitting there, the bloating that a lot of our athletes complain about when they eat too close to practice. And that is because those three nutrients, they take a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort for the body to digest and break down and turn into energy. And the body really only likes to do one hard thing at a time. So that could be training or that could be digesting. So if we have a really heavy, difficult to digest meal too close to a workout, either they're going to feel like the food is sitting there or they're going to feel really sluggish. They're not going to feel great. So if we're having, whether it's a meal or a mini meal, a big snack, even a small snack, somewhere between about 1 to 2.5, maybe 3 hours before a workout, we want to modify their plate. We want to make sure they're getting enough energy, right? Lots of grains and starches. We want to scale back on the fiber a little bit. Most athletes seem to do a bit better with fruit compared to vegetables right before a workout. And we even want to scale back on the protein a little bit. We do, if we've got enough time to digest, we do still want some protein in their system during a workout that can help with muscle maintenance. But at this point, the priority is going to be energy that's going to be a little bit more digestible. So just let me go back 1 second. Just so some examples of a plate like this might be, a sandwich or a wrap with a side of fruit. It might be, an oatmeal bowl made with milk with fruit and maybe some nuts or something like that. It could even be a acai bowl or a yogurt parfait, or it could be a burrito bowl or a power bowl. But we want lots of grains, a little bit of fruit or vegetables, and a little bit of protein. So if our athletes are eating right before practice, so maybe they did have a full meal and it was 3 hours ago, or maybe there's just not a ton of time in between when they get home from school and when they've got to go to a workout. At this point, we really just want to give them a plate that is mostly easily digested carbohydrates, more simple grains, crackers, pretzels, granola bars, bread, white rice, right? Even some fruit, right? Grains that are not going to be super hard or super high in fiber. That way they can kind of hit the ground running at practice with energy that has kind of gone through their stomach and is now easily accessible. Please know that, yes, I have kind of some time frames here, but know that everyone is different. Everyone digests food a little bit differently at a different rate. Right? I know some athletes that could eat literally anything before practice and right before practice and not be impacted. I know someone that if they had a meal that had more than 2 grams of fiber in it, like 3 hours before their workout, they can't, they're going to be sick to their stomach, right? Everyone is going to be different. The lines between these plates are going to be blurred, but this is going to be a good idea, kind of a good framework to have. Eating during a workout. So I know we've got a variety of athletes on here, but if your workout is, with most of the sports we've got on here, if your workout is going to be 3 hours or longer, no matter how wonderfully you fueled your body prior to that workout, it is likely that around that, 90-minute to 2 hour mark, that you're going to start to notice some of the signs of low energy, whether you just can't give your all, you're tired, you're fatigued, your mood starts to shift or change, the mental challenges, the mental blocks seem to pop up a little bit more frequently. It is really beneficial at around that 90 minute to 2 hour mark to have a snack that is going to be high in simple carbohydrates. It's got to be really simple to eat. And at this point in the day, we don't need to worry about them being the most healthy, the most nutrient dense foods. Right? The more nutrients in the snack, the longer they're going to take to digest. So mid workout, we don't actually want a snack that's very high in protein. We don't want a snack that's lots of vegetables or nuts that's going to be super high in fiber. We want simple carbohydrates. A lot of athletes love granola bars. They love granola bites. They love the squeezes. They love dried cereal, pretzels, even whether they're the fruit snacks, they're the dried fruit snacks. Those are going to be really easy. They're going to know, athletes are going to start to notice that they're feeling more energized and not more sluggish. If your athlete has a snack break, right, for a practice that is 4 or 5 hours, or if they're there all day, they've got a meal break, we probably want to give them, right, they're not going to be able to subside for 5 hours on just carbohydrates alone. At that point, we probably need to give them a little bit more nutrients. So if we are giving them a meal or a little bit of a bigger snack, we want to go back to that modified high intensity plate. So if you're thinking about different snacks, right, we could give them a bunch of crackers, maybe some grapes and a string cheese, or we could give them some like overnight oats or oatmeal bars, or not the granola bites, the protein bites that you can make with the oats and the peanut butter and all of that stuff. A pre-workout meal, right? A sandwich or a wrap is going to be really easy. That's going to give them lots of grains, lots of protein. We can always pair it with some fruit, or any of the suggestions that I kind of said before, right? The yogurt parfait, the acai bowl. Those are going to be really easy mid-workout. And after a workout, it is so, so important, no matter what time of day or night it is, that our athlete eats after practice. They are walking out of that workout empty, right? Their body needs to do two things. It needs to refill their energy stores, and it needs to start rebuilding, repairing, and recovering. So the two most essential nutrients for recovery are going to be carbohydrates and protein. We hear a ton about protein for recovery, but at the end of the day, like I said, protein does not work by itself. If we give an athlete just protein after a workout, that protein is not actually really going to go to the muscles, right? The body's number one priority is always going to be energy. It's going to take that food, it's going to convert it into, the broken down form of carbohydrate, and there's not going to be much protein left. So we always say carbohydrate is protein sparing. When we eat carbohydrates, the carbohydrates go to the energy, the protein can go to the muscles. So after a workout, ideally in a perfect world, we are going to get our athlete a balanced plate somewhere between, 0 minutes and 3 hours when they leave that workout. We want to make sure our athlete gets something into their body within that first hour of workout ending. If they are going home and eating lunch, eating dinner, we want to give them a balanced plate. If there is going to be more time, if there is going to be, if it's just a weird time of day, right? It's not lunch, it's not dinner. If you've got a long drive home, you've got the carpool, you've got some errands to run on the way home, let's get our athletes a snack and then serve them a meal, right? No more than 3 hours after practice. A snack could be as simple as chocolate milk, peanut butter toast, cheese and crackers, yogurt and fruit, yogurt and granola. Or like I said, we can just serve them dinner. So I know this is kind of a lot of information, and if you feel like where you're currently at and what you're currently doing is very, very different than everything that I described, I don't want you to fear. I don't want you to panic. I don't want you to overhaul everything by January 1st. Right? I want you to pick one thing that has felt tough or challenging or that is jumping out in your mind. Maybe it's adding one food, one type of food group, one opportunity for a meal or a snack, and I want you to start there, right? Because at the end of the day, consistency is going to have a much bigger impact than doing something that feels really unsustainable for a short amount of time and then giving up. Um, and we've got to practice, right? We do not want the first time our athletes to eat early morning breakfast to be the day that they've got an 8 a.m. start. Right? We need to start every day they wake up early for school or for an early morning workout. Then we want them to work on breakfast those days, right? If we're wondering what to feed them the right before a competition, we fall back on what they're eating before practice. If you're not sure what to pack in their competition bag, we fall back on the stuff they've been taking to practice. If you're not sure what to feed them the night before a big competition, then we think back to, okay, what are their favorite dinners? What helps them sleep the best, wake up feeling energized and having their body feel good? We've got to practice all of these things. As we've been saying in the chat, we are going to take some time for questions, but really quick, if you are looking for more, I'm going to leave my contact up here for you guys. For those that are not gymnasts, as I mentioned, I love working with gymnasts so much that I have specifically put together a program for you. So if you and your gymnast are looking to really dive in to learn step by step how to fuel your body, so you can have more energy, so you can reduce the risk of injuries, and you can help them perform at their best, then I have put together my signature program called the Fueled Gymnast Academy. So inside the Fueled Gymnast Academy, you are going to get access to 8 jam-packed modules that are really going to teach you everything from navigating their body signals to even more about building the performance plates, helping you build out your fueling schedule, what to eat, take to school, what to eat before and during and after practice, about hydration, about recovery, specifically about fueling for a competition day. There's bonus information on things like picky eating and meal prepping and navigating the grocery store and navigating nutrition as our athletes are growing and developing. Inside the program, you will also get access to handouts and worksheets and challenges and journals that are really going to help you take ownership of your fueling journey, as well as lots of recipes, meal ideas, snack ideas, and more. So this program has 2 options. There is a self-paced program where you can go through everything on your own if that's something you like. There's also a VIP option where you're going to get access to 2 60-minute private one-on-one coaching calls with me to really help you individualize and troubleshoot through your fueling routine. And as a special holiday gift from me and as a way for me to say thank you to all of you for joining me in this webinar, I'm going to give you all, we're going to drop it in the chat. You guys are going to save $50 on either program if you decide to register through the end of the year. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out. If you had, I know there were some questions throughout, we can definitely answer questions. I'm going to leave my information up here for you as well as we answer questions.
Thanks so much, Carrie. Yeah, I'm excited. We do have a couple of questions here that we can touch base on. First, we have a question from Jane. This sounds like an athlete. We train 1 to 6 p.m. How do we do lunch and pre-workout snacks? So a scheduling question.
Yes. So it's really going to depend on, I think, how early your gymnast wakes up in the morning, especially if she's got to do some schooling and that kind of stuff. So my suggestion would be breakfast pretty early, like right when she wakes up, right? Maybe like not 8, 8:30. And then I would do lunch, right? Around, so if she trains around 2, or I would do like a high intensity performance plate lunch, maybe like 11:30, right? 11:30. We probably wouldn't need another snack at that point, until she's at practice, right? If she's practicing 1 to 6, I would definitely give her at least 2 or 3 of those high carbohydrate options to kind of snack on throughout a 5-hour practice. Maybe a little bit of protein, maybe a meat stick, or a little bit of peanut butter, or a string cheese, just because that's a really long workout, but something like that. And then making sure she's having a solid dinner afterwards.
And I really liked your suggestion that you made partway through the presentation of talking to, say, teachers or their school, because I think a lot of teachers, if knowing their situation and their dietary needs, would be willing to make accommodations for these high-level athletes. So a question from Jill, any suggestions for picky eaters?
So picky eaters are definitely a challenge, especially because I'm sure everyone on here has some level of their athlete having preferences. More often than not, I find that athletes, they just don't want to hear it from you. I'm sorry, parents, they don't want to hear it from you. So getting them the opportunity, right? If we've got some athletes and some picky athletes on here today, sometimes just hearing and learning for themselves about the things that they're struggling with, helping them make those connections, between what they're struggling with, and maybe if they're not eating enough, or if they're they never eat protein, like, oh, maybe that's why you're having such a hard time with your conditioning or something like that. That starts to get the gears moving, and they're a little bit more open and receptive, once they learn a little more and they understand a little more. I find getting them involved and getting them options. I know our athletes have really busy schedules, but especially this week, right? If we're all off, get them in the kitchen, take them to the grocery store or the farmer's market, or somewhere where they can explore, where they can pick out something, maybe it's something new or something slightly different, something they want to try, um, and get them involved a little bit more, even just giving them options, saying like, okay, we're going to add fruit to your breakfast this morning. Do you want apples or oranges? Just having that sort of option gets them a little bit more willing to try something.
Very nice. Yeah. And then from Jeannie, I see, how about athletes with nut allergies?
Yeah, I saw a lot of questions in here, with about sensitivities and allergies, nuts, gluten, and dairy. So I'm going to answer all of these together. Um, if you're really struggling, I would definitely suggest working with someone that can help you, with the nut allergies. There's a lot of alternatives. So whether it's the sun butter, the sunflower seed butter, there's like oat butter now. If you're looking for like an alternative to a nut butter, to a peanut butter, um, if you're looking for an alternative to like physical nuts, I mean, there's always pumpkin seeds or sunflower seeds, hemp hearts. There's the crunchy chickpeas, the wasabi peas, or the edamame, right? If you're looking to build like a trail mix or a snack mix, there's differences there. Um, I mean, when it comes to granola bars, I know sometimes it's really hard. If you email me, I've got a whole list of nut-free ones because I'm also nut-free. So I can always send that to you. I think no nuts has been a favorite for a lot of people. Same kind of goes for the dairy. If they are just lactose intolerant, when it comes to milk, if they don't mind the taste, I love either the Lactaid or the Fairlife milk, which is lactose free. A lot of the alternatives, the almond milks, they're starting to fortify them, meaning there are options with the protein and the calcium added. Same for the yogurt. There's now almond milk yogurt and the coconut yogurt that have pretty equivalent protein as well. In terms of snacks, right? I mean, of course, we're just not recommending cheese or string cheese or anything like that. But again, maybe for the lactose, we can go for the meat sticks. We can go for the other things that I mentioned, the seeds, the chickpeas, those types of foods, right? There's a lot of alternative out there. For those that are gluten-free, I would suggest, we don't need to rely necessarily on the gluten-free pretzels or the gluten-free crackers, although those can be a good alternative for some athletes. We can look to the grains that are naturally gluten-free. Like we can look for things that are rice-based or things that are oat-based or things that are quinoa-based or potato-based. Right? That might go over a little bit better, and we don't necessarily have to do the alternatives if you don't want to.
Awesome. Those are great suggestions. We did have one more question, and maybe what we'll do is we will follow up on that one more question in our follow-up email. Everyone, after this presentation, we are going to send you a little bit more information about how to contact Carrie if you would like to. And just to close us up, I know that folks are looking forward to learning who our $250 gift certificate winner is. So just to very quickly close out, this is our sales team. These are the experts that if you call our Tumbl Trak phone line, these are folks who can help you with all kinds of questions. Tumbl Trak really loves to support athletes in their entire journey, including what we've learned here from Carrie, nutrition being a very important component of it. So we are very excited and proud to bring all of this great information to you. Thank you so much, Carrie. Next, I know that a lot of you do follow us on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. Let's get to our giveaway though. Carrie, so your job is to pick our winner by choosing a number between 1 and 50.
How about 16?
16. All right. So I am going to check in our comment section. I start a random place and I count 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Look at that. I almost thought it was you, Carrie. This is another Carrie from Safety Harbor, Florida. Carrie from Florida, are you still here? If you are, just drop a quick comment in our chat line, or chat here, and we will get you your gift certificate. We'll give you a couple more seconds. Yay, she's here. Carrie, if you wouldn't mind, I'll leave my email here, and you can send me an email with your contact information. We'll get you that certificate. Congratulations. All right. So once again, thank you so much, Carrie, for bringing this incredible information to us. I see that there were a bunch of athletes and parents in our presentation today. You'll all get the email presentation after we're done here. But as well, in the email, you'll see all kinds of ways to contact Carrie and get more information, including her website and her parent Facebook group, etc. Thank you so much for attending today and spending time with us. And I hope you all have a wonderful and happy New Year. Take care. Bye-bye.